one of the most memorable fantasy films and one of my favorites, really stands out as well directed, fantastically cast and acted, with an incredible score, and I cannot wait to talk to you about Conan the Barbarian. This is an action-packed fantasy movie about a boy whose parents are killed by a warlord and sorcerer who then grows up to become an invincible thief, fighter that seeks revenge on that warlord and eventually becomes a man, a conqueror, the legend. It's based on a comic book by Robert E. Howard, and it has a lot of history, a lot of lore, a lot of myths in there, and of course, it's a beloved icon in the movies because Arnold Schwarzenegger personified an amazing, powerful character that suited him extremely well. It's directed by John Milius, who also has a few very interesting writing credits, such as Apocalypse Now. Also, the movie was co-written by Oliver Stone, and it has a lot of very good source material, so you can imagine how good this movie actually is. If you haven't seen it, I would like to say, move on from this review and go watch it, because this is a movie that will stand out in your memory as incredible, deep, and not only fun but emotional, which is extremely surprising. Arnold personifies Conan extremely well, not only with his very unique physicality, but his accent, his lack of dialogue at certain points, his naivety, and his acting and ability to perform stunts really fits the character. In fact, everybody thinks of Arnold as the Terminator, but I feel that Conan is a character that's closer to who Arnold is as a person. He is ambitious, he is relentless, he's funny and charismatic, he's curious about the world but cemented in a particular ideology. He believes in a god that is vengeful and it's merciless. It's all about war, destruction, but also about iron and weapons and honor. It's incredibly well directed because it provides focus for a character that is bigger than the world that it's around him, but at the same time it provides side characters that have meat, that have history, reasoning, and everything is laid out in front of you, so you don't have to guess why is a character doing a particular thing or not doing something else. Conan has not sidekicks, he has warriors next to him that are equally as important to the story. They are extremely agile and effective of the type of fighting that they do. He has a sorcerer companion that is extremely vital to the story, a love interest that is very interesting and almost as strong and determined as he is, and an enemy that is so powerful, played by James Earl Jones, providing this very deep voice, but a tone of mystery and a tone of invincibility that is extremely well paired and a very good antagonist to what Conan is doing. James Earl Jones brings Thulsa Doom to a next level of villainy, not only because he's able to do huge atrocities, but also because he's measured, he's almost always in control, and he manages the people around him extremely well. Not only as a warlord, but as a sorcerer, he's extremely effective because he leads a cult of people that are willing to do everything for him, including living their lives, committing murder, doing these crazy ceremonies with snakes. And I'm about to touch on something very cool, which is the magic and the monsters of this extremely good movie.
Power pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then to hell with you.
If you're thinking of the fantasy genre, of course you're going to think of fantastic creatures, different non-human entities that inhabit a particular world, and Conan the Barbarian has plenty of those. To me, two stand out because they are unique and done so well. The first one is this succubus, seductress, demon-possessed woman who actually provides some guidance to Conan. If you're watching the uncensored version, you know exactly of the scene that I'm talking about. It's done so well because not only it manages to, be unique and scary, but also it plays to the character of Conan, who is a bit naive and it's not very aware and knows how to navigate a world full of magic. He's still young and inexperienced, and he still manages to handle the situation very well. The other creature that stands out in my mind is a giant snake. And when I mean giant, I mean it can occupy an entire room. It's this thick. Anyway, I'm not gonna spoil it for you, but the creature effects are so well done. And they're practical, and they're believable, and really it doesn't break your suspense of disbelief at any point. There's elements of sorcery and magic. I mentioned to you before that there's a side character who is a sorcerer, who is actually the narrator of this particular story, and he's played so well and depicted as this incredibly powerful, yet measured, yet comic relief. And to write a character that's so well portrayed in a movie, it's very difficult, but this is so perfectly handled. And Conan the Barbarian does this over and over. It writes characters that are compelling, interesting, have depth, have story, and they're important to the plot. And one of the very interesting characters here is Conan's love interest Valeria, who not only provides an incentive for Conan to do something, she pushes Conan's character to become something else. When you think of Conan, you think of somebody that is crass, that is strong, that doesn't care about anything but himself, about the conquest, about the death, about Aaron, about his sword. But when Valeria comes in, he starts changing. He becomes more caring. He evolves into a character that is way bigger than just somebody that is brute, so to speak. And he becomes a caring, charismatic, loving companion to somebody who really deserves his attention. And if you are going to watch the movie, you see how much Valeria pushes Conan to become somebody more than just what he was at the beginning. It is not only about revenge about himself, but it is a revenge to what Thulsa Doom does to everybody around him. He's a force of destruction, and Valeria falls prey to the world that Conan is fighting constantly against. And the beautiful portrayal of their relationship, making it kind, loving, sensual, adventurous, it's just outstanding in a movie that, technically speaking, has very crude, crass situations, but they're managed extremely well. The stunts and the fight scenes are so incredibly well managed because this movie can be extremely bloody, but at the same time, it can be a little bit bloody, so it manages to show us almost full contact. There's battles that are extremely well done with people falling off horses, huge animals being involved in a fight, sword fights, fist fights, chokings, falls. It is so memorable that I can remember almost every clash of the sword, almost every punch and destruction that this movie really manages to do so well, considering that you're dealing with people that are fairly large, and it's difficult to perform as somebody that, it's muscular, to also be agile and know how to fall and not hurt themselves or others. It's very unique to see Arnold do so many of his stunts. To be honest, he is fantastic at sword fighting, at least for stunt purposes, and the beauty of him riding the horse, of all of his companions doing most of the stunt work, all of the antagonists doing the stunt work, you can see how well the director knew where to point the camera and when to hide any sleight of hand, to really make you believe that you're seeing the characters that you've been following throughout the movie do all of this amazing combat and destruction and carnage. The ability of doing that is actually very rare, and it was very well done back in the 80s. There's a lot of things that you forgive because you know it's a movie that's done in that era. But this works much better for this film because the characters are so large and what they're doing is a little bit slower. You can actually forgive slower action that pays off. The sounds are your classic punch and clash of iron against iron. It's beautiful. The design of everything on set, costume-wise, the composition of the shots, it's just outstanding and so good. But once you hear the soundtrack, you cannot get that sucker out of your mind, out of your heart. But once you hear the dun 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 dun, you know exactly the scene that is playing in your mind. And Basil Poledouris, who also did the soundtrack for Robocop, just blew my mind. He created one of the most iconic soundtracks ever. The same sound that you associate with Jaws, dun 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 dun. Well, you can associate the same type of music with Conan, with the world that surrounds him. It represents the action, the drama, the emotion of what's happening on screen, and every single tone of music is so memorable and orchestral and powerful that, simply put, as soon as you play the melody, you'll know the film lives within you.
There comes a time, thief, when the jewels cease to sparkle, when the gold loses its luster, when the throne room becomes a prison.
The story at the end is a character study. Arnold fits so well the particular role that, to me, it's my favorite of his portrayal ever. The character starts as this mute, stoic, absolutely careless fighter. And when Conan gains his freedom, when he obtains his sword and learns about the god that allowed him to have iron in his hands, power and destruction, he becomes somebody different. And as the story progresses, the character keeps evolving with the story to adapt to the situation and to the people involved in his life as he's trying to seek revenge. And the portrayal that Arnold did here is just breathtaking, from being very self-contained and quiet and almost detached to being more involved and curious to being more charismatic and intriguing and adventurous, and finally ending in the character we fell in love with because he showed strength, he achieved what he wanted, but he needed to transform the world around him, churn him out as this weathered, powerful, relentless, but at the same time wounded character. And the accent, the acting ability, the physicality, the amount of work and dedication that Arnold put into this role shows and pays off. It creates a memorable character that shows emotions through actions and few words, that can do amazing stunts and really create a memorable connection with something inside that I cannot say that I feel towards many other characters that I have seen on screen. And definitely, aside from a few of small glimpses in Terminator 2 and perhaps Commando, Conan the Barbarian is the alter ego for Arnold, and vice versa. It's that seriously good.
They were taken to the hall of King Osric, the usurper. Once a powerful Northman like my lord, but now old and sodded.
As you can see by my emotion, my speed of speech, I love this movie. There is very few flaws that I can remember, and I rewatch this film once, maybe twice a year. It created such a powerful emotional connection with the characters, a depiction of fantasy that hasn't been rivaled in anything else, practical effects that are still relevant to today, a character that is bigger than life but extremely believable, side characters and villains that are incredibly well done, that are not sidetracked, that are important to the story and have their own reasoning and arcs. an unforgettable soundtrack that keeps replaying in my mind, and whenever I need to pump iron, I simply hit play. Direction that is outstanding and knows exactly the kind of movie that it's doing, and how to shoot action in order to make it realistic, believable, and also safe. Conan the Barbarian is on my top 10 of all time for best action fantasy movies. And I really hope that if you haven't seen it, you're gonna find it somewhere on a streaming platform or gonna go buy it because it's worth your time and money. If you have movies that are that iconic and relevant to you, I would love to read about them in the comments. My name is Jin from Get Me More, and you know where to find me. Thanks for watching.
Seeking for the truth of her soul, as if I could not give it to her.